Hey, what is going on, everyone? Today we're going to go over AWS Security Quick Review. Just a disclaimer, I am not endorsed by AWS, and a shout out to SlidesGo for making this great presentation slide. Now, I'm going to continue, and let's start off with IAM. That is your Identity and Access Management Service. It's a free global service. Now, it's composed of multiple things. We usually use it for giving roles, and roles are made to help avoid sharing access keys. It basically gives access or temporarily is assumed by users or entities. Basically, you can use person or applications, okay? Then you have your permissions, which is basically your JSON formatted document, which allows for these policies to apply for roles or whatever. Then you have your MFA, your multi-factor authentication. Then you have your access analyzer, which is your policy checker. Everything comes in a full circle. Now, to go into a little more detail, whenever you refer to who, you're thinking of authentication, and when you're referring to what, it's authorization. We always want to keep in mind that we want to give the minimum access, also referred to as principle of least privilege. If you're familiar with the CLI, the client uses the private key while a resource like EC2 uses a public key. And you can check the credential report, which gives you a list of these user status, access keys, and MFAs, right? Now, you have a responsibility, AWS has a responsibility. So whenever I see the word guest, I'm thinking security in the cloud, meaning you, right? OS, database, apps, data, IAM, what we just talked about, network traffic. And what AWS is responsible for of the cloud is obviously their infrastructure, their data centers, and patching it on their side or host. A bonus is if you see the word trusted advisor, now they have security checks, and the basic support plan should offer you security checks. So all of them should have at least the security checks. Now, some of the best practices that we kind of already discussed, but they are pretty much statements, and one is rotating your keys, requiring those MFAs, applying the least privilege, doing guardrails, and temporary credentials. We just talked about all of them. I highly suggest you check the page out and at least read them so you're kind of aware of if they might come on the test or whatever. Usually you'll look at WAF versus Shield. So WAF is the firewall. You're looking at SQL injection, cross-site scripting, web attacks. And whenever you see the word DDoS, you're going to look for Shield, okay? And that's going to be two types, the standard and the advanced. The advanced is the paid one, okay? And you're going to look at tools. There's so many tools, but each tool is distinct in themselves. So for example, if you see illegal activities and you want to report them, AWS abuse. If you look at sensitive data in S3 and want to find these special things, you use Macy. If you want a detection system, guard duty. EC2, instance vulnerability, inspector. When you're looking at mobile or web applications, cognito. The root cause of security issues, detective. Whenever you're looking for compliance, that's artifact. And obviously any configuration deals with AWS config. Now, there's two things to note, or phrases, when you're dealing with encryption. Data in transit, when the data is moving across the network. Data at rest, when it's persistent media or like storage. There are different ways to manage your keys. One is to use KMS, but if you have a hardware version, Cloud HSM is your target. And then if you have your secret manager, which manages and retrieves password and keys. You have other tools. Now, these may or may not show up on the exam, but they're shown across multiple quizzes and practices that I've gone through, so might as well know them, right? So you have your certificate manager, which looks at SSL and TLS certificates. You have your firewall manager, most similar to WAF, but you can think of this as a cross account. You have directory service, which stores information, users, groups, whatever. You have your hub, looking at security findings, again, multiple accounts. You have your audit manager. This is different from before because it looks at risk and compliance than artifact. Okay. Last but not least, we have our signer, which is a fully managed code signing service, thus the name. You also have certificate authority for private certificates, permissions for permissions, and security lake for security data. Often you hear about the data lake. Now that's pretty much it for security. I'm sure there's more out there. So do your due diligence and study up and practice. I hope you found this quick review helpful. Leave a comment below and let me know. Take care and good luck. You got this.